He just wants to have the headline of being the last person to go with all the.
Correct us both.
That's right, yeah.
What they said is wrong.
That's right. Well, it's been quite a busy time down in the Senate, down in the General Assembly, going through quite a few bills, trying to get things through and move on to the House bills and make them over starting in 2 weeks, I guess. I've been dealing quite a bit with some education things that we continue to try and figure out what is best for the state of Indiana. As we all know, there's a severe budget crisis, not only here but in every state, and so we try to figure out how to fund things and keep people happy and keep our kids educated, and it's a tough balance to do sometimes, but we're trying. One bill that we're working on in education would allow corporations to transfer funds from one budget fund to another in order to shore up some shortfalls in certain areas, and I certainly support that idea. I'd like to see that get through. Another hot issue is the school start date. There is a bill that proposes that school could not start in the fall before either the fourth Monday in August or after Labor Day, and there's some negotiations on which date is better. But I support that bill. There are some exceptions for Goshen, for instance, if they decide to go to a year-round calendar, would be able to be exempted from that, and other schools that do that. But the reasoning behind that is twofold. First of all, studies show that it would save the state a considerable amount of money. When you consider kids sitting in a classroom in the middle of August, generally the hottest part of the year, air conditioning costs are a big expense to schools. And my understanding is there's some schools that don't have air conditioning. And so if you remember when you were a 10-year-old sitting in a 95-degree classroom, the education tends to slip a little when you're sweating and uncomfortable and so on. And so that was one side of it. The other side is tourism dollars would come into the state more heavily. And Michigan has went to this model, and they have shown to profit from that. And so, and Elkhart County is considered a tourist county. And so we had people from my county, our county, coming down to the state and testifying in favor of this, and so they convinced me, and so I support it. I don't know what the House will do with it. I think we'll pass it out of the Senate. I have no idea if the House will look at that bill or not. I'd like to see them do that, but who knows. And then one thing I'm working on currently that's not education related has to do with ephedrine. As we're all aware, we have a big meth problem here in the state of Indiana, but even more so in Elkhart County and the surrounding counties. And so I have proposed a bill with the help of some people that there's a system that Kentucky uses and Illinois uses that is provided by the drug makers of ephedrine. And they've acknowledged that this is a problem, so they've come to the table with a solution, and it's working, I believe, in Illinois and Kentucky. And it's a system that would be free to the state. And if you were going to go into a pharmacy and purchase some ephedrine, currently you'd have to sign a log, you get your product, you go home, and then they check against other logs in other places to see if you're over the limit. There was a case in southern Indiana where a grandma purchased this ephedrine for her grandkids because they were all sick and went way over the limit. She had no idea what the limit was and ended up getting arrested and had her mug shot in the paper, and it was just not a pretty situation. She's a hardened criminal by the time that was over. But so this system would stop it at real time. So if you were to go in and buy ephedrine, it gets logged in the computer immediately, and within 1 second, the pharmacist or the clerk behind the counter will know if you're at the limit or not, and will say, you're at the limit, you can't purchase this, and it shuts it down. I think it's a great idea. I think we need to do that. There's a few logistics that we need to work out. The one-hitters, as they call them, that you can buy at a convenience store. These meth heads have gotten so crafty that they can now purchase the one-hitters at a convenience store, take a mason jar or a ball jar, they make the stuff, throw the jar away alongside the road, and they can do that on a daily basis to supply their need. But But this starts the process of stopping it. Now, the state police's argument is the only way you're going to prevent meth labs is to turn this into what's called a Schedule 3, which would mean you need a prescription to go get ephedrine. Well, I'm not in favor of that at this point. I think that would drive up costs for the consumer considerably, going to a doctor every time you need some Sudafed or whatever. So I think we need to try this. I'm optimistic we'll get it through the Senate, and then I'm going to lean on my compatriots over here to get it through the House and see if we can't get it implemented. But I'm excited about that. I think it'll definitely make a dent in our meth lab problem. There was one other bill I wanted to discuss. Oh, net metering. This is Wes's subject, but I'll touch on it, and he can fill in where I'm wrong. But the Senate has passed a bill that will allow net metering, which is if you want to put a windmill in your backyard and create your own energy, your own electricity, you will be allowed to do that. It will go onto the grid, and you will be credited back depending on how much electricity you use versus how much you produce. Now, again, we had discussions on if I put 3 windmills in my backyard and I produce a certain amount of electricity that goes beyond what I use in my home, how much should I be credited back? Do I get credited back at the retail level, or do I get credited back at a wholesale level? Well, my belief is it should probably be at a wholesale level because I'm using the power lines, the grid, and all that stuff that I don't pay for. And so I think we need to be fair. And so there were some negotiations there. But I'm encouraged that we're going down that road to allow people to start looking at making their own energy and creating their own energy. So I'm excited about that bill as well. With that, the main act is about to come up, so I'll let him do that.